thanks to Philip Tetlock for doing the demanding research that is the foundation of this audiobook, and for being generous and helpful at an unimaginably difficult time in his life. A gentleman and a scholar indeed. Also thanks to my research assistant, Courtney Simons, and my marvelous editors, Susan Renouf at McClelland & Stewart, and Stephen Morrow at Dutton. Many others contributed one way or another to the audiobook you're listening to, including Scott Gilmore, Rudyard Griffiths, Liam Scott, Bruce Schneier, and my longtime friends and colleagues David Watson and Leonard Stern. A special thanks to Paul Slovich, John Mueller, Mark Ramsey, and Barry Dworkin for reading early versions and providing invaluable thoughts and suggestions. Of course, having been written by a fallible human, this book will contain errors, for which the author is solely responsible. All corrections and constructive criticism will be gratefully received. And finally, thanks to my wife Sandra, without whom I could do and would be nothing. Chapter 1. Introduction. The end of everything we call life is close at hand and cannot be evaded. H.G. Wells, 1946. George Edward Scott, my mother's father, was born in an English village near the city of Nottingham. It was 1906. We can be sure that anyone who took notice of George's arrival in the world agreed that he was a very lucky baby. There was the house he lived in, for one thing. It was the work of his father, a successful builder, and it was, like the man who built it, correct, confident, and proudly Victorian. Middle-class prosperity was evident throughout, from the sprawling rooms to the stained glass windows and the cast-iron bathtub with a pull cord that rang a bell downstairs. A maid carrying a bucket of hot water would arrive in due course. And there was the country and the era. Often romanticized as the long Edwardian summer, Britain at the beginning of the 20th century was indeed a land of peace and prosperity, if not strawberries and champagne. Britain led the world in industry, science, education, medicine, trade, and finance. Its empire was vaster than any in history, and its navy invincible. The great and terrible war with Napoleon's France was tucked away in dusty history books, and few worried that its like would ever come again. It was a time when progress was capitalized. People were wealthier. They ate better and lived longer. Trade, travel, and communication steadily expanded, a process that would be called, much later, globalization. Science advanced briskly, revealing nature's secrets and churning out technological marvels, each more wonderful than the last, from the train to the telegraph to the airplane. The latest of these arrived only 4 years before George Scott was born, and in 1912, when George was 6, his father gathered the family in a field to witness the miracle of a man flying through the air in a machine. The pilot waved to the gawkers below. "Now I've seen it," George's grandmother muttered, "but I still don't believe it." And the future? How could it be anything but grand? In 1902, the great American economist John Bates Clark imagined himself in 2002, looking back on the last 100 years. He pronounced himself profoundly satisfied. There is certainly enough in our present condition to make our gladness overflow, and to hope that the spirit of laughter and song may abide with us through the years that are coming, Clark wrote. The 20th century had been a triumph, in Clark's imagining. Technology had flourished, conflict between labor and capital had vanished, and prosperity had grown until the slums were transformed into abodes of happiness and health. Only trade had crossed borders, never armies, and in the whole long century not a shot had been fired in anger. Of course, this was only to be expected, Clark wrote, even though some silly people in earlier generations had actually believed war could happen in the modern world. As if nations bound together by such economic ties as now unite the countries of the world would ever disrupt the great industrial organism and begin fighting. At the time, Clark's vision seemed as reasonable as it was hopeful.